Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we are back with a first look video, this time taking a peek at Tier VIII Premium Dutch cruiser, Zeven Provinciën. I'm probably going to mispronounce all these Dutch cruisers at least once, guys. Have some patience. I'm trying to learn, okay? Dutch is not even remotely close to my first language, and I'm going to butcher it, and so just smile and nod and have a little patience. But Zeven Provinciën here comes to a very, very, very crowded field of cruisers at Tier 8. In fact, if I go back over here and look, hang on a minute, let me undo this filter. Right now I've got my list filtered by light cruiser. If I filter this by simply all Tier 8 cruisers, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30. No, that's not right. 29. No, that's not right. 28. 28. When she comes to the game, she will be the 28th Tier 8 cruiser in World of Warships. So yeah, there is a lot of competition in this tier, including some real standouts in the premium department. Ships like Prinz Eugen, ships like Atago, ships like Kutuzov. So how does she stack up? Well, let's root around under the hood and find out. Starting as we always do with survivability. 33,800 hit points. Yikes. Yikes, this is low, guys. This is quite low. This is a little ahead of Tiger 59, which is just released into the game, but this is behind just about every other Tier 8 cruiser, like just about all of them. There's a couple that she's ahead of, but it's a very, very short list. So, yeah, this is not anything to get excited about. Yeah, there's not much I can say there. Now, I will say the 19% torpedo protection is quite good. It's not best in tier. Bayard, mines, are ahead of her here, but it's not, like, this is still quite good. At the same time, you don't even have 34,000 hit points, right? Like, don't be taking torpedoes. You can't afford it, right? You simply cannot afford it. Armor layout, not a lot to get excited about here either, if we're honest. 25mm bow extremities means that she can handle, when she's top tier, let's say, or even middle tier, depending on the battleships you're up against, she can handle bow taking some of the smaller caliber battleship shells she is going to run into. But her armor belt is quite bad, 75mm here. It kind of tapers. You've got 50 here just above the waterline, 75, and then, of course, it tapers back down to 30 once you can pull the water on. This 75mm belt is very, very, very thin. So, Zeven Provinciën is a ship that's going to hold up to heavy cruiser fire. Let's say when she's angled, she'll bounce heavy cruiser AP. She will lead most heavy cruiser HE as full penetrations, but that's generally not catastrophic. Although, again, with a ship with this little HP, even full pins will add up over time. So, yeah, this is a ship you have to be very, very careful with from a survivability perspective. Now, actually, I'm showing you the belt, right? Let's have a quick look at the Citadel, because that's always a useful thing to see on a light cruiser. Now, from a Citadel perspective, there's actually quite a lot to like. This Citadel is very long, right? All the way forward of turret A, all the way forward back to a stern of turret Y. However, it's fairly well protected. If I put the torpedo bulges back up, you can kind of see here, she's got a little bit of that French spaced armor scheme going on, okay? So she's got that going for her, and if I turn the bulge back off, you can see her Citadel is quite low in the water. The trick is that if you're broadside to a battleship, he does not care. Like, he may overpin you, but if he can get shells on the right trajectory, he's absolutely going to Citadel this ship. Your armor scheme will not prevent that. The only hope you have is just trying to hope, cross your fingers, pray to RNGesus, hope the shells overpin your superstructure or something. All right, so let's go have a look at maneuverability and concealment. Maneuverability, 32 knots, 730 meters in the turning circle, 9.1 seconds on the rudder shift. 32 knots at Tier 8 is pretty pedestrian. This is quite slow, if I'm honest. The turning circle, the speed, the handling is going to make her feel a little bit like, probably a little bit like Bayard. The difference is the Bayard is still faster, right? Even Bayard's base speed is 2 knots ahead of this. But in terms of turning circle and rudder shift, that's a good analog to look for. What about a tech tree ship? Looking to see if there's a tech tree ship that's comparable in here. dicey. I don't really see anything in the tech tree that works. There's a lot of Tier 8 premium cruisers, guys, a whole lot of them now. But yeah, Bayard is probably a decent handling comparison, again, except for that top speed. Concealment on the surface, 11.5. You see there, that's with her permanent camo installed. You strip that away. It is 11.9 base detection, naked, ready to go. Full stealth rig, you get this ship down to 9.3. That's pretty good, and it's honestly fairly comparable with most of the other light cruisers you're going to find in this tier, right? Bayard is 9.6. Cleveland, also 9.3. Belfast 43, 8.9. Edinburgh, 9.2. So you're in that same kind of ballpark. Again, it's a Tier 8 light cruiser. It's got decent stealth. That's not outrageous. Aerial detection, you see there, 8.5. I suspect that by the time you start stacking things, you'll get that down to about where it needs to be so that you cannot, that her aerial detection and her AA radius stack up, match up, which is what should happen. And we'll look at her AA radius, and that'll be an eye opener when we get there in a minute. Let's talk about her main battery. The Zeven Provincië is built around these 4 double-barreled 6-inch turrets. These are 152mm guns. See them here, 2 forward and 2 astern. These reload every 6 seconds. You see there with 144 meters dispersion, 11% fire chance, 2150 on the HE, 3000 on the AP, and a 16.1 kilometer range. 900 meters per second out of the barrel. That's actually not too bad in terms of shell velocity. I mean, these are not going to be Atlanta shells. They should not arc and hang for days. The DPS on this ship, though, right, because of the 8 barrels, right, as light cruisers go at Tier 8, 8 barrels is really bad, right? That's not very much. Cleveland, for example, has 12 barrels on a 6.5 second reload. So from a straight-up DPM perspective, Cleveland blows this thing absolutely out of the water. So if you're going to be taking this ship, you have to be a little more cognizant of the fact that you're giving up some of that utility, right? The American light cruisers really known for that utility. You don't have Kutuzov's range, you don't have Kutuzov's smoke, you don't have Kutuzov's shell ballistics, right? You're kind of in the middle of all this, and you're bringing a little less utility to a match, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So you kind of have to be, I'd say, I don't know. To me, this is a ship that, as I look at it, will probably play like an open water cruiser. I'm betting that those shell velocities will not be very conducive to just lobbing shells over islands all day, except maybe at extreme range. So yeah, the good news is that stealth, that 9.3 detection, does give you the ability to kind of weasel in and out of some situations, especially if you play her right. Let's say you're used to playing an Atago, right? Again, Atago has that 9.3 detection. So does the Zeven Provincië. So, situations that you would not be unafraid to put an Atago in, you should not necessarily be afraid to put this ship into. In fact, if I go back and look at the handling, this ship actually is going to handle, maybe even a little better than Atago. And Atago's handling is pretty good. Her turning circle is a little less. Her rudder is slightly less responsive, but probably not so much that you'll notice. The 16.1 kilometers is pretty typical of light cruisers at Tier 8. Light cruisers at Tier 8. You'll find some shorter. I'm looking at you, Edinburgh. I'm looking at you, Cleveland. You'll find some longer. Again, Bayard is a little longer. Obviously, the Russians, the Kutuzovs, and the Chapayevs of the world are quite a bit longer, depending on which one of those ships you're talking about. Again, I look at a ship like Bayard, and I think that's probably kind of, again, looking at the range and the guns, of course, the difference there, Bayard has way more guns. AA defense. Now, this is significantly noteworthy, so let's talk about this for a minute. The Zeven Provincië's AA is built on the back of her dual-purpose main battery. Yes, these are dual-purpose guns. You wouldn't look at these turrets and think they'd be dual-purpose, right? Most of the dual-purpose 6-inch guns that I've seen, for example, you go look at the ones on Seattle, the barrel elevation sleeves come all the way up. Like, you can angle those guns like almost straight up, right? The Zeven Provincië doesn't have that, but her guns, her main battery is listed as part of her dual-purpose armament. That's presumably where she's getting this 6.9 kilometer outer ring. Now, that 74 DPS in her outer ring is not amazing. However, she is putting up some flak in that ring, 4 puffs at 1680 damage a pop. For Tier 8, 1680 damage that's really good. That's big. I mean, I know a lot of people poo-poo flak, flak, ha ha ha. But like, This is a big number, guys. Okay, for Tier VIII, this is huge. So this is a ship that, like, if you're driving a carrier and you really don't want to fly into the flak, because you'll notice, you will absolutely feel it. That's a lot of damage out of the flak. Now, her continuous damage to that outer ring, nothing to write home about, of course. However, look at that middle ring, 670 DPS on the back of both these 57 millimeter Bofors she's got here. She's got 4 mounts of these, 1 forward, 1 aft to a midshift, and then of course she backs it up with even more of these 40 millimeter Bofors mounts that are just kind of dotted all over the ship, mostly over the superstructure here. You see she's got probably looks like about 4 on each side of her superstructure. Yeah, so those all together give her an absolutely ridiculous mid-range aura. You will driving planes into this at this ship into her mid-range aura, you will know you've been touched, right? So planes that can get in and out of her aura quickly may not feel this as bad. I'm looking at you, for example, Germany, right? Those super quick planes. However, if you're the Brits, and you're flying your mediocre, I'm not talking about you, Indomitable. I'm not looking at you, but like, the Brits in general have tankier planes that are kind of slower, the British carriers do. You're going to spend a lot of time in this aura, and your tankiness is not going to feel all that tanky because this is a really, really big number. So, yeah, I mean, this ship absolutely blows away every other mid-range aura at every other cruiser in Tier 8. This is like battleship mid-range aura, right? This is like a number you would expect to see out of a Massachusetts or an Alabama for their mid-range aura at Tier 8. This is punishing. Now, fun question, though. Does she get defensive fire to go with it? She does not. However, her consumables list does have some interesting things on it, so let's talk about this. Obviously, she gets damage control party. She's a ship in World of Warships. There it is. Now, she does get engine boost. We talked earlier about her kind of somewhat pedestrian speed. The engine boost will help make up for this a little bit. This is a standard engine boost. You see there an 8% boost on a 2-minute use and a 2-minute cooldown. So, again, not amazing, but certainly something worth using to reposition or to get away, to sneak, you're spotted on the surface. I want to get away from it, or is it spotting me? Let's go, right? Put a speed flag up, pop this baby on, and you've got quite a bit more speed than you had a minute ago. And she does get the crazy, crazy, crazy British light cruiser heal. So, we kind of harped earlier a little bit about her survivability. She doesn't have a lot of HP. If she can manage that HP effectively, she can stay in games longer because she has 3 charges of the crazy British light cruiser heal, right? So this thing is going to play, in that respect, a little bit like an Edinburgh. You might be okay taking some risks with this ship as long as you're confident that you can sneak away and get out of them. Now, one more thing I want to talk about here is we're starting to look at the Dutch cruisers, and we're going to see more of this when we start doing first look videos over in the tech tree. But that is this Airstrike thing that Wargaming has given the Dutch line. One of the things I was expecting to see this as a consumable, right? I figured it would have a handful of charges. It does not. This is part of the base armament of the ship. It takes the place of what would normally have been torpedoes, for example. So, basically, and this is something that you can use multiple times in the match. You see there, it's got a 60-second cooldown. That's not something that you can reduce because, of course, it's not a consumable, right? So your November Foxtrot flags and everything, you can't make this come back faster. But like your torpedoes, you do get to use it multiple times in a match. This is interesting to me. I will say, I think... See, if you're paying attention by now, you realize that I've had to go back and maybe re-record this portion of the video a little bit. Because, yes, I have actually played the ship at this point. I know how this functions, and it wasn't what I was expecting at all from a player perspective. I will say that there's been some rage videos going around about, oh, look at what these do and all this sort of thing. And I think there's definitely some balance tweaking that needs to be done in here. You've seen the clips of one of the Alaskas getting wrecked or some, like a French battleship, for example, getting its face melted off. With these bombs, that ought to be pretty doable as long as that ship is stationary or not moving very well or so on. But I mean, let's be honest. See, one of the reasons that doesn't bother me, right? It really doesn't. And here's why. one of the reasons that you see me, this is personal opinion, guys. One of the reasons you see me commonly play cruiser is that the battleship play style in this game tends to be very static, right? The mechanics of World of Warships reward static battleship play. 80% of the time, let's say, right? I sit here with my bow to the enemy, showing them the best armor profile that I can, unmasking the turrets that I need to do my job, and tank a trillion damage, and so on. I understand from a gameplay perspective, like a game mechanics and functionality perspective, why that is, okay? I get all of these things. But me, personally, I don't enjoy playing that way. I want to play a ship. I don't want to play a shore battery. And I struggle with Battleship a lot of the time because of it. Now, there are battleships in the game that don't lend themselves to that type of play. And if you do see me play Battleship, you're very rarely going to see me, play that kind of a game because I just don't enjoy it. It's not fun to me. This mechanic, this HE bomb airstrike mechanic, absolutely seems designed from my seat to punish ships and punish players that take static positions, that snuggle up next to islands, etc., etc., etc. And so what I think it means is in games with a high tier Dutch cruiser, and this is the critical point, right? The Dutch don't start getting access to this, I think, until Tier VIII. In a game with a high tier Dutch cruiser, you maybe have to, think about that a little bit, or you risk getting whacked for your insolence. So something to think about. I realize why this mechanic is rage-inducing to people. I am not fussed by it yet. I want to see it in use. I want to be on the receiving end, and I want to see it more of it, from my chair as the player, how easy it is to use, how effective it is, and so on, before I make a judgment. What else have we talked about? We've hit all of these categories. We've talked about the airstrikes. We've talked about the survivability. Yeah, that's kind of about it, really. I'm really kind of not sure what I think of this ship. I feel like, first of all, she's absolutely gorgeous. The lines of this ship are simply stunning. She's beautiful. Zeven Provincië was a post-war ship. She was actually laid down in 1939. Her construction was interrupted by the invasion of the Netherlands by Nazi Germany, and when that occurred. And then she wasn't finished and launched, I think, until the early 1950s. I want to say like 1952, 1953, something along those lines. And then she served about 25-ish years in the Royal Dutch Navy. She wasn't retired. I think she was decommissioned about mid-1970s, and then she was later sold to Peru, where she served another 20 years before they scrapped her right at the turn of the century. So this is a ship that has a beautiful history. I'm glad she's coming to World of Warships. But as I look over her stats, her characteristics, the tools she brings to a match, I'm a little bit curious as to where she's going to fill. One thing I want to point out, guys, and you're going to find this a lot as we go through Dutch cruisers, the ship has no torpedoes. The Dutch apparently were not big on torpedoes. 0 torpedoes. So not even like the foolish Russian 4-kilometer, charge of death torpedoes. There's nothing here. Your guns are it. What you bring to the match is the guns, the survivability of the crazy heel, and your one charge of airstrike. You have no hydro. You have no radar. You have no defensive fire, although your AA is quite good. So if you want to team up with a battleship, let's say somebody that doesn't have amazing AA, I'm looking at you, Vittorio Veneto, for example. That's a nice pairing, right? That could make for a good little division. But again, you're lacking a lot of the utility that you probably expect to find on a Tier VIII light cruiser here. Anyways, guys, that's kind of my first thoughts at Zeven Provincië. I hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands, be safe, and I'll catch you next time.